Hey guys, welcome Fergie Time. Today I am interviewing James, aka AMC JEEPMAN, the man, the legend. Yeah, I'm excited to figure out why he's so fond of the old school Jeeps and just what a great history he's got with them. And yeah, hopefully you like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thanks. Guys, hey, Fergie Time, and today I am chatting with the man, the legend, AMC JEEPMAN. James, how are you?
Doing awesome. Good to talk to you today. Really appreciate you taking an interest in my silliness that I like to share online.
Well, dude, I love it. I love all these new Jeepers doing all the new stuff, new crazy things, and you're just keeping it. I don't want to say just keeping it old school, but like you're doing crazy stuff on the CJs that people don't even try on the new stuff.
That's what I grew up with and knew, and like a lot of people my age, when you get old enough to get the resources to start actually doing things, you go back, build that classic the way you wanted it. On my red CJ that I have, the one I just call the red Jeep, that's my high school Jeep, or the Sunday Jeep. That's the one, like if I had all the money I needed when I was in high school, this is what I would have built. I would have had the big tires and the big motor and done that. And then, so when I started trail riding, 35 years ago, 30 years.
Yeah. Get into how you got started. Like, when did you start getting into Jeeps? When did you start?
Cannot remember a moment in my life that I haven't liked Jeeps and four-wheel drives. I know for certain, because I still have a piece of it, the first model Jeep I had when I was 4 years old. I don't know what clicked about it back then, because ever since, when I was a little kid, I drew pictures of Jeeps and four-wheel drive trucks, and I always kind of gravitated toward Jeeps. Nobody owned a Jeep in my family. My uncle had a Wagoneer for a brief time, but it wasn't like I didn't grow up around them. It all started with me. And then I would buy, like back in 1976, I had magazines. I would have been about 13 at the time and started having some allowance money. My allowance money went to Jeep magazines and comic books back then. And that's when I did. I got my first CJ when I was 16 years old. Got lucky. My father knew a guy that had one, and they were able to work out a deal. Honestly wished I knew as much back then as I do now, because that was a 1965 Tuxedo Park CJ5. Now it would have been a nice kind of collector's item to have. But back then it was, it was a 4-cylinder, had a 3-speed column shift standard transmission. Yeah, I hated it. It was loose because it was wore out, and it had little bitty tires on it. None of the things I wanted. Complaining and wheeling and dealing and saving money and a few things, I was able to swap it for a 1961 CJ5 that had a small block Chevrolet in it. Through the course of time, I called it the money pit, because I threw money at it faster than anything you've ever seen. I kept it for a good long time. That was my start with Jeeps, of actually having them. I have Jeep model cars. I have four-wheeling off-road. I remember when JP magazine came out. I had the first and second issues when they were just standalones before they actually became a actual monthly magazine. I've got boxes of all of that old stuff in my outbuilding. Just a lifetime of collect. Since I've turned 16, there's probably only been about 2 or 3 years in my life that I haven't owned a CJ of some kind. And
Wow, that's awesome.
now there's 17 Jeeps at the house. Some of them are running.
I was going to ask you,
so
you have 17?
Yeah, there are 17 Jeeps. Now, there's like a couple of XJs that were wrecked and I got for parts, and then some Wagoneers that I bought and parted out. And then a friend of mine used to race, and they used to have four-wheel drive races that were like motorcycle motocross races on the East Coast. They still do some of it like in Pennsylvania and out in the Northwest areas. They race Jeeps over. It would be like short course King of the Hammers. You got a rough area and then a little bit of a long speedway, but it was short racing, and they used to have the Mid-Atlantic Four-Wheel Drive Association when I was like 14, 15 on up into where I was in my early 20s, and I had several friends in the area that raced that, and I've actually got one of my old friends' Jeeps that he used to race. It's an old Jeepster Commando, and we hope get it repaired one day. But there's too many projects. I got a flat fender project. I got 2 scrambler projects. I've got my dad's CJ5. He actually got into Jeeps after I got into Jeeps. Before he passed away, he gave that CJ5 to my son, and we're hoping to start this year to get it back running and restored so my son can drive it. It's a 79 CJ5 with the 304 V8 to make something nice to ride around, cruise in the summer. I call them ice cream getters.
So what's your oldest CJ you own right now?
The oldest CJ I own is a 1950 CJ3A flat fender. Willis belonged to a member of a local club, and we lost her to cancer a few years back. And at that time, I had been kind of looking for a flat fender Jeep, and when she was going through her 3rd round with cancer, I reached out to her because she was trying to get some money together to help pay for her medical treatments and stuff like that. And she said she knew that, that I'd been looking for one. And so I was able to end up with it. And that's the problem with having 17 Jeeps and being one person. There's actually, say, 10 of those, which I want to keep running and driving. I've realized it's impossible to do that by myself. I actually got rid of a couple of Jeeps already within the last few months, and my goal is to get rid of 3 or 4 of those 10 that are runners that are not bought for parts. To get rid of 3 or 4 of those, and I want to get down to me just having 5 personal Jeeps.
So why 5?
Just 5 would cover all of the different things.
So like you'd have one for snow wheeling, one for Sunday driving,
around, one for looking good, one for hard bashing in the rocks, and one for medium bashing in the rocks, and one to drive. That's because I don't count my wife's Jeep as mine. She's got her own JK. We use it a lot. I drive it a lot because she doesn't drive when we go on long trips, but I call it the adventure Jeep. We took it out to Arizona last year. It's been up and down, on family vacations and stuff. And then I recently picked up a diesel Gladiator, and I want to use it because when I go to a lot of Jeep events, I carry one of the CJs, either the red one or the blue one that I call Rick's Jeep. A lot of times she doesn't like to do all of the Jeep events, especially trail riding. She has lower back issues and she can't do the trail ride. So she didn't like driving my diesel truck when we were, in Tennessee for Jeep Invasion, or in Florida for Jeep Beach, or at something like that. So we've got a trip planned out to Moab for Easter Jeep Safari. So I'm hoping to use the Gladiator. That way that gives her something she can drive around, and I can be out riding around in one of the CJs.
Where are you at now?
In North Carolina, 10 miles from the Virginia border. I'm like right in the middle. If you picked Greensboro, North Carolina, Martinsville, Virginia, and Danville, Virginia, an area called Rockingham County.
There's some decent wheeling out there?
No. We used to have some good places that they were all, say, within a couple hours drive in North Carolina. And the club that I ride with, the Carolina Trailblazers, we had, 5 or 6 different places in the mountain area of North Carolina, not counting Uwharrie National Forest, which is about the last OHV area we had. But we had Tellico, but from my house, Tellico's a 6-hour drive. We could be up in Mountain City, Tennessee, or Elkin, North Carolina, or North Wilkesboro, Robbinsville. There were areas all along that ridge line on the Carolina-Tennessee border and Southern Virginia area, which had some areas that we could wheel. But during the course of my 30 years with the Trailblazers, we've lost all of that area to ride, except for Uwharrie National Forest. And Uwharrie National Forest closes December, the middle of December, and doesn't open back up until April 1st. So during the winter, we have to drive, and that's been a challenge. Our club schedules a ride every single month of the year. Since the club got started in 1971, they've had a ride every single month of the year, and less than 10 of them have ever had to be canceled. Nowadays, back then people used to throw everything in the back of a CJ or a YJ and drive to the trail. Now everybody, we're all trucks, trailers, campers, and stuff like that. So we try to make it to where, you don't want to risk that investment, in bad weather driving to West Virginia. This weekend coming up, leaving tomorrow, we're actually going to ride out to Carolina Beach in North Carolina, because they have a Fort Fisher State Recreation Area is an area where you can drive out on the beach. People primarily use it to go out and fish. I mean, you can't go fast and you can't spin in the dunes and jump the hills and things like that. So, but we'll go out there and ride. I remember standing in Johnson Valley at the Hammers, and I spun around in a circle, and I told a couple of the other club members that was there with us. We were there for the King of the Hammers back in 2014. I said, we can drive in 5 minutes in any direction and hit more trails, and there's more riding than we can stand at my house and turn around and get there in 8 hours. I think we're Windrock this year and Harlan and 3 or 4 different places in West Virginia, a couple of those that I just mentioned, plus a new place for us. I think it's Bear Walla. Used to be part of the Hatfield McCoy, which is a big ATV, UTV area, but they've actually, within the last 5 years, opened up some OHV trails for full-size vehicles.
On Instagram, you're AMCJEEPMAN. So obviously you have a fondness for the older Jeeps, the CJ Jeeps.
Correct.
Nice. My dad had a AMC Eagle.
Yeah, I'd love to have an Eagle. SX4.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. That was the closest my dad, because my dad's like, no, you can never drive a Jeep. They'll tip over. That was the big thing back then.
That was the big thing. I remember when they did that scam 60 Minutes. And if you go look into the details of what they did, they got like 8 rollovers out of 1,112 or 1,170 tries. And they had a machine that would turn the wheel like 8 times faster than was humanly possible. It was crazy.
So why'd you stay with the CJs and not you mentioned a Gladiator, you mentioned a JK, but like, why is your love the CJ?
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot to do with nostalgia. When I was growing up, everybody had CJs. Toyota Land Cruisers were still imported, but you only saw 1 or 2 Land Cruisers. But man, you figure by 1976 or by 79, when I turned 16, all of the Jeeps were CJs or J trucks, or you had big things like the Blazer or the Scout. Everybody that went riding back then had a Jeep mostly. A few people had Blazers and stuff like that, but there were so many Jeeps that had been made all through that time. You literally could buy a Willys Jeep for like $250, back in the 70s. Now, it was not going to be a cream puff nice one, but they're simple to work on. It was easy to get one running, keep one running. So much military. Plus, too, they made changes through the years, but they weren't such dramatic changes that if you needed parts, you had tons and tons of parts availability. They were just, common. If you had a Jeep CJ, then literally it set you apart. It was there was cars and trucks and pickups, but there was nothing else like a Jeep CJ. You either had one back, when I was really young, farmers had them, people that hunted and fished, they had them because they need them for their work. And then it was people who you were basically saying, I go places and do things. It was almost like a statement that you were different. And I think that appealed to me a lot. I'm not a sports guy. I don't watch football, don't play teams. I wrestled in high school, but it wasn't it wasn't what I was thrilled about. I did it to get my letter and to get my letter jacket to earn that. But it wasn't big to me. When I was growing up, it was all the alligator shirts and Izods and stuff like that. And man, the whole time I was wearing ball caps and Jeep t-shirts in high school. That's been my attire for all of my adult life.
I didn't know the CJ was like from 1945 to 1986.
Yeah. And then the YJ The YJ's not a ton different. Very, the tubs are the same. There's just the grill and the fenders and the hood basically are the only substantive visual difference.
Yeah. Well, when you saw the first YJ and you saw the square headlights, were you like, what did they do to my Jeep?
Right, yeah. Everybody hated on it. Yuppie Jeeps. That was the thing. Yeah, yuppies.
Oh,
Yuppies was the derogatory term for them because that when you had a CJ, that was a hardcore. You went camping, you went hunting, you went fishing, you drove in the mountains. Yuppie was all about that's a pretend thing.
you talked about building different Jeeps for different things. So your CJ that you're building for rock crawling, like, do you have like a cage on it? Like, did you do all
Yeah.
that? Like, did you do modifications like that?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
I have a '81 Jeep CJ7 and it uses a factory roll bar that utilizing kits that were available at the time that were weld in that gives you like some of your main hoops and stuff. I built a cage off of that, and then as time went by, I added to that cage, tied that cage into the frame and things like that. But it all started with the basic roll bar, and then Smittybilt back in the day was offered a front hoop with front spreader bars. All of my CJs that I regularly use have that same basic type of cage with a front bar and then spreader bars over the hoop.
So what's one of the craziest trail fixes you had to do?
Okay, not on my CJ. Fortunately, I've been lucky. I hadn't had to do anything super significant, replace a
Good.
drive shaft or something. Yeah, really. But we were at a trail ride. The club was at a ride one time, and we had a guest. And this particular trail was called the Globe. Three main obstacles. It had some off-camber areas, but the three main obstacles were three successive hill climbs. And the third, they got progressively longer and steeper for each hill climb. And the third one had a terrace. It was about a foot deep that run across the trail going up about 2/3 up. The soil was loose, and so you couldn't just crawl. It's not like a lot of trails you see where you can just, as long as you stick it and crawl and stay steady, you can just pick your way up it. This one you had to kind of maintain some momentum so you had enough bump to carry you over that terrace, that step in the trail. Well, we had a guest with us, and he had some trail experience. A nice CJ, was a granny CJ7, full cage, harnesses and all of that. But he felt like he had wheeled a lot out west. And so he felt like, I'll just crawl this. And so he got up to that spot, and he's in granny gear, and he doesn't have enough speed to pull over that terrace. So he's sitting there on the loose ground, loose rock, just spinning. And when he tries to realize that he's not going to go, and I mean, it's a really steep hill, I know, because I walked up and down it a couple of times. He tries to pull it out of granny gear and is going to let it roll back, put it in first gear, and then kind of well, it didn't happen. And he rolled completely over and over in down the 2/3 of the hill. And he separated the steering shaft from the steering box, broke a steering knuckle where the drag link comes down, flattened 3 of his 4 tires, and separated the front and rear drive shafts and a few other things like that. Amazingly, he and his wife were fine. But we put that Jeep together, welded the steering back arm on, put the drive shafts together, reseated the beads on the tires, and did all of that, and drove it off the trail.
No way.
Yes, yes, drove it off the trail. Now, this happened at 2:30 in the afternoon. We were about an hour from the exit. It was a loop trail. You went in the same entrance as you out.
Yeah.
This happened around 2:30 in the afternoon. We didn't drive off the trail until midnight that night.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't get home until 5 that morning and had to be at work at 6.
Oh,
Because it was a Sunday trail ride.
I've seen videos of out at Moab, and there's all these crazy trails, and then you see some old flat fender Jeep going and doing the same trail that all these other crazy Jeeps are doing. Do you think does it make you a better driver to drive these CJs through these technical areas, like the people getting these bigger Jeeps and 42s or bigger, or all the super stuff? Is it make them like soft?
Not soft, but say not as skilled. And I'm not.
Okay.
I have obviously JKs, JLs, JTs, so much more available. And I know guys that hardcore wheel them. I mean,
Sure.
they're what I call it. There's Jeep owners, and then there's Jeepers. And a lot of the guys that own the classics like I do, they discount anything. They're minivans or Fiat Jeeps or whatever. My son's got.
I have a 4-door JKU. I've heard it all.
My son's got a 2017 JKU. My wife's is a 2016 JKU. I got a 21 Gladiator. I like Jeeps of all kinds. My favorite are CJs, but when it comes to trail riding, seat time is king. The more your seat time you have within your vehicle. But separating that out, going back to what you said about an older, simpler vehicle, that teaches you picking lines. That teaches you to pay attention to your tire placement so that you're picking lines. You're just not saying, hey, I'm on 42s and I'm locked front and rear, point and shoot. On a lot of the trails that are out, that covers you 3/4 of the time. But then again, if you're on 42s and you're locked front and rear running tons and plenty of stuff like that, when you get on something that is really challenging to that level of vehicle, going back to having started with something simpler, something more basic, that'll be the difference between the guy that sits there and just beats on it till it breaks or you pull cable, and the guy that just elegantly drives right up it. So if you start out with something like that, when I started trail riding, no lockers and carburetors, oh God, fuel injection is so sweet. And that's why I have it on my trail Jeep, and we'll be putting it on Rick's Jeep, the blue one. And I also have a 05 Rubicon Unlimited, and it's like a friend of mine. That one's almost like cheating, just because it's automatic, it's fuel injected 4.0, and of course lockers front and rear. I'm going to run 37-inch stickies on it. I've been running 35s for years on it. But when I retire the black Jeep, I'm going to move the stickies over to the Rubicon Unlimited. Having that seat time in a simpler vehicle makes you pay attention to lines and makes you a better driver. Like if you could do the same thing with a stock JKU. I know people that have even with JK Rubicons or JL Rubicons, they'll try to drive as much of the trail as they can without hitting lockers. And that just teaches you to be a good driver. That's the key is knowing your vehicle. That's the downside of like me. I've wheeled like 4 different Jeeps in the last, constantly for the last 20 years. At least 10 since my Rubicon's of 2015. I've had it for 10 years. Prior to that, I wheeled strictly CJs, but it doesn't let you get as comfortable and as good as somebody who has got a vehicle and they've got decades in the vehicle or 10 years in a vehicle or a similar vehicle. But I tell people all the time, if you can, if you don't have to have tons and 40s to start trail riding. If you want to do hardcore rock bouncing, crazy stuff like you see, like Flex Rocks and Rollers, Marvin and people like that feature, which is awesome, fun,
Oh, I love
it's
that.
hard
That's
to start
my
at that
favorite.
level.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah, Marvin's awesome. I love them. Andrew Bailey and all of them guys, they're great. Love them. Love watching their content. And Off-Road and Chill, Marlon and Luna, they're great. Love to watch their content and talk to them.
So when did you start getting into, because your Instagram, I mean, you've got a lot of followers, you do a lot of cool stuff. Like, when did you start getting into Instagram, and do you think it changed the Jeep world?
I've been on Instagram for, I guess, almost 10 years maybe now, at least 7. Facebook, I was on one, I've been on Facebook for almost since it came out. And it's a great tool to keep up with like the bulletin boards. You know, I'm AMC JEEPMAN. If you go on Jeep Forum and you look up AMC JEEPMAN, that's me. Or if you go on Pirate 4x4, if you've ever heard of that, Pirate
I need to look it
4x4
up,
is
huh?
legendary. That was the old school massive bulletin board forum where everybody that off-roaded went to share information, share trails, share builds, and stuff like that. That's how a lot of that communication spread of new ideas, new way of doing things, new suspension ideas, new products available. That's what beating the magazines as becoming the primary source. And then, like I say, with Facebook, the bulletin boards started kind of stepping back. They didn't have the traffic. You know, Facebook is instant gratification. And so, so when I built my Facebook, it's mostly some of my club stuff, some of my family stuff. You know, I have when I go on family trips or friends that I went to high school, that's what Facebook is. So Instagram became a platform where I said I could start focusing on when I got on it. You know, there were people doing one thing. It wasn't about who you are. It was about what you liked. And so that's what I started doing. I just started sharing Jeep pictures because I'm not the most knowledgeable guy about Jeeps. There are people I look up to or that I call if I have a question about some rare option on a CJ or when a trim changed, because I have a lot of people that enjoy straight classic restoration, unmolested classic Jeeps. That drives a lot of my traffic. Actually, more so, I get more reaction to those style of Jeeps than I do, say, if I feature trail riding or things like that. But I like it all. But so that's kind of how that started. I said, well, here, because the Jeeps and four-wheel drive have always been, core to who I am. So I said, but this Instagram here, this lets me focus solely on that. And so that's, if you look back over mine, it's 95% Jeeps with maybe a sprinkle of Disney. And then when I was a machinist before I retired, if I made something really cool in the machine shop, or if I made some Jeep parts, I would share those Jeep parts, but it's 95 or more % Jeep.
So now you retire and here's 17 Jeeps for you to work on.
Right. Yeah. and every friend of mine that owns an old Jeep.
Yeah, they're like, hey,
right
James.
Right now on the list, I have 4 sets of axles to build. I have at least 2 transmissions to build. I got to do some maintenance work on another friend of mine's Jeep. And then just this week, I've been talking to a guy about swapping a V8. Plus, I have all the stuff I want to do to my own Jeeps. I want to put a fuel-injected V8 in the blue one. I've got a scrambler I'm trying to put together as a rider to keep for a while or either sell or whatever, but I have my own stuff. So
what keeps that fun?
What keeps that? I don't know. That's like, what do you do to get your mind off of the real world, politics and the bull crap that you hear and are inundated with every day? Or when I was still working, what did I do to get release from the real world? Well, that's my shop. My shop is my safe space. And I like mechanical things. I like, I don't do puzzles. I honestly don't watch a lot of YouTube videos. I try to support, like I say, those people that I mentioned, and I have other friends like Red Eye Garage that does a lot of flat fender stuff, and Old Six Court and Superior Wheelies. I have friends that, produce a lot of great YouTube content. Trying to support those of my friends that do it occupies what little time I do, because I don't watch much TV. I do more in the winter. It's easy, even though I've got heat in my shop and it's decent. I don't like to be out there at 10 o'clock at night in the middle of winter. So I'll come in and watch some TV. But during the summer, man, when it gets nice, when I finish my coffee in the morning, I go outside. And I come in when the wife says supper are ready, and a lot of times I go back out. I don't get in till midnight. I just love being out there. Now, it doesn't mean I'm busting tail, working, sweat flying, wrenches turning, constantly that whole time, because like I say, I'm 62, I'll be 63, but I'll be out there either sitting and looking something, but I do a lot of work when I'm home.
All right, rapid fire questions. Ready? Leaf springs or coils?
Leaf springs are for poor people, and I'm poor, so I still run leaf springs. Coil suspension, stuff like that, what you can do with it now is absolutely game-changing. You can make leaf spring suspension works, but it doesn't hold a candle to a well-thought-out coil suspension. I'm classic. I like them. One of my Jeeps is coils, and the older ones are leafs, but coils are the way to go if you're building.
Carb or fuel injection?
Fuel injection. Man.
Yeah, you said you were going to transfer one over to fuel injection.
Yeah, I've done, like I say, the black CJ they used to ride. Oh, man, I've done everything you could possibly do to make a carburetor work. And they work. You can make them work. But they don't hold a candle to a good fuel injection system.
One tool you never wheel without?
My air down tools, man. Every video you watch, air down, bro.
Most underrated old Jeep mod?
Hand throttle.
Yeah,
I still see so many people out there that don't use a hand throttle, man. It gives you so much control. And it's simple. And I made mine out of like a bicycle brake and a cable.
If you could keep one Jeep forever, which one are you not letting go of?
The one that I call the red Jeep. That's all. That's the Primo.
That's a pretty
baby.
Jeep.
That's the one I've actually owned the longest. It's also the one that's gotten the most love. It's got a 401 out of a Javelin in it. It's more of a hot rod, but I actually started. I used to trail ride it. That's when I started with the Trailblazers. That was the Jeep I owned. So that was the Jeep I trail rode.
Bucket list trails.
All of the stuff that I have done has basically been out west. East Coast. I've wheeled a lot of places up and down the East Coast. So for me, bucket list is Moab. I've never wheeled Moab. When I go Easter Jeep Safari this year, that'll be my first trip out there. And then, of course, Rubicon. Fordyce, trails out west. Trail Hero almost always conflicts with a couple of events that I'm involved in here on the East Coast during that time. Like our club event is every October. I'm also a member of the Virginia Four-Wheel Drive Association. We have a big ride in September. I've been a Jeep Jamboree trail guide for a year, and we have a ride that's either in September and October. So prepping for all of that and doing all of that. And then we have a veterans ride in November, and I work with that group that puts that ride on. A lot of the times, unsurprisingly, I'm the one that begs for raffle prizes and then runs the raffles because I like to run my mouth, and I'm not afraid of being in front of a crowd and acting silly and doing that kind of thing. So I get involved in a lot of those events. Like that, and we have a lot in the fall. But Winter Jamboree, there's not a lot going on during that time, and I know a lot of the guys that go during that time, so I'm thinking maybe that might be my wintertime out west trip this coming year.
There you go. If your life had a theme song, what song would it be?
Immigrant Song from Led Zeppelin. We come from the land of snow. It's got a good beat. It's going. I trace my ancestry to Norse ancestry. I'm going to go with that one. Led Zeppelin's one of my top tier bands. If I could think of a good Southern gospel song, because I like to be positive and present that with a little bit of what I do without it being too blatant.
Thanks for hanging out. I really appreciate it.
Honestly, I'm flattered that anybody wants to pay attention to what I'm doing, because I just love Jeeps, and I like old Jeeps a whole lot. All I'm doing is saying, hey, I love Jeeps, and saying at the same time, man, I hope you find something you love and you have a great day. Have a blessed day. That's
heck yeah.
That's what it is. Life's got so many opportunities for you to be able to go out and enjoy what we have and not be focused or drugged down by all of the things you get inundated with. Distract yourself with fun, because I figure you get one trip here, might as well make the best of it. I intend to enjoy the ride.
Heck yeah. All right, guys. Hey, that was fun. I'm definitely going to hope to hit that scramble out in Uray in the summer. But yeah, hopefully you like that. Definitely check out his Instagram, AMCJEEPMAN. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thanks, guys.